好，各位同学跟大家讲一下，就是说这个今天因为203跟国际会议厅都借给别人啊，那所以我们今天的上课是这一间跟这个112。那以后的话呢，国际会议厅我们也不会用了，我们就是这里跟203。 啊，这里跟203，那这里的话，我们就是实体上课，那203的话就是这个看影片，那就是视讯的上课这样子啊。那可能看一下之后的状况，再决定是不是有时候我们实体上课203，然后这边看影片，我也不晓得。好，现在目前状况不知道，总之是这样子安排。好，那如果人数少到根本不需要另外一间的话，我们就全部在这一间上就好了啊。那最好是90人以下，那我们就全部都在这里上课啊。或者是超过90人都没来上课，那也 OK， 反正我没有点名嘛，好，反正我没有点名啊。OK， 好，好，赶快先入座啊。 好，我们就开始上课。好。OK， 好，我们继续谈这个 polarization。好，不过因为上礼拜讲到一半就断掉，所以我还是从头开始。So we talk about the polarization state of electromagnetic wave for monochromatic EM wave. And we assume that suppose I stand somewhere at Z and I see an electromagnetic wave coming to me, and I observe how the electric field vibrates. Okay. So in general, for this plane wave propagating along the positive Z direction, we know that the electric field is perpendicular to the K vector. In vector, or the empty space. In vacuum, K dot E is 0, which means that if you assume that K is along the Z direction, then we know that E has two components, the X component and the Y component. And these two components can have different phase. So can have different phase and amplitude. So we, in general, we have Ex of Z T written as AX cosine omega t minus KZ plus delta x. And the EY being written as AY cosine omega t minus kc plus delta y. And then we define delta as the phase difference of these two components. So now I want to know what is the superposition vector of the E vector. Okay. What is the resultant E vector? How the locus, how the E vector evolve? What is the locus, 轨迹 of the E vector? Okay, so we want to find these things. First, the shape of the locus. Two, the orientation. The orientation. 一个方向，还有一个形状，一个方向，好。然后第三个是什么东西呢？第三个是 sense of revolution。好，就是它电场正来正去或绕来绕去的时候，它究竟是怎么绕的？是逆时针还是顺时针？好，我们基本上想要知道这三件事。好，想要知道这三件事。好，那第一件事的话，我们先把轨迹找出来，形状就是轨迹嘛。好，轨迹。然后呢，所以我们先找形状。So let me define some simplified notation. Alpha defined as omega t minus kz plus delta x. So I can write this as ax cosine alpha, and this can be written as ay cosine alpha plus delta. Okay. 好，所以我们根据这两个式子，我们想要知道这个电场的这个头、这个尖端、这个向量的头究竟是绕什么曲线啊 ？So we want to know what the head of the E vector, what shape, what curve is described. Can use to describe the locus of the E vector. So according to these two equations, first I have Ex over Ax equal to cosine alpha. And I have Ey over Ay written as cosine alpha plus delta. Then according to the formulas of trigonometric functions, we know that Ey over Ay is equal to cosine alpha cosine delta minus sine alpha sine delta. Here cosine alpha is nothing but Ex over Ax cosine delta minus sine alpha sine delta. So now we want to derive an equation which do not show any information about alpha. So how to hide alpha? We can write down the equation as this form and square it. So we have sine square alpha sine square delta. And then we remember that sine square is equal to 1 minus cosine square. And cosine alpha square is just dx over ax squared. Okay. So finally we have an equation of this dx squared over ax squared minus 2 dx over ax dy over ay cosine delta plus dy square over ay square, and this is equal to sine square delta. Okay. This equation corresponds to conic section or conic 圆锥曲线啊，圆锥曲线。But what is the specific shape of this curve? Correspond to this curve. It might be ellipse, or parabola, or hyperbola. Okay, there are 3 possibilities, and we know that the electromagnetic wave must have finite energy density. Which means that the E square must be finite. E square must be finite. So it is impossible to be parabola or hyperbola. Okay， 就是说可以是椭圆、抛物线或者双曲线，但是双曲线跟椭圆，双曲线跟抛物线，它的特色就是它的这个其中一个变量可以延伸到无穷，不是其中一个，它2个变量都可以延伸到无穷远啊，无穷远。但无穷远的话，就有无穷大的电场，那无穷大的电场就会给出无穷大的能量，但这是不可能啊。So for parabola or hyperbola shape, we have infinite E vector, which corresponds to infinite energy density, which is impossible. Okay, so we must choose the the only possible solution is ellipse. 就是说这个曲线唯一的可能，它就是一个椭圆。So now we want to know what is the specific shape of this ellipse and its orientation. The axis. For an ellipse, we have this major axis and this minor axis. The length of this is A and this is B. Okay, and in general, the ellipse, the orientation, we assume the orientation, the angle be phi. So now we want to find A, B, and phi. Okay, so how to calculate these quantities? I can rewrite this equation. We divide this whole equation by psi squared delta. I rewrite this equation as this form. And then I can write it as EX EY times a matrix 1 over AX squared psi squared delta minus cosine delta AX AY sine squared delta minus cosine delta AX AY sine squared delta 1 over AY squared sine squared delta EX EY 1. Okay. So now I define this matrix as matrix M. And I denote this vector as E. And this becomes ET transpose. Okay? So this equation now can be written as T M E equal to 1. Okay? Remember that in general this ellipse has an arbitrary orientation like this. This is the orientation angle. This means that we can transform the coordinate axis in this way. I can rotate the coordinate axis from xy to x prime y prime. From ex, ey to ex prime, ey prime. So that finally we will have ex prime squared over a squared plus ey prime squared over b squared equal to 1, which is the standard formula for an ellipse. Okay, so if I write the transformation as this, e x e y prime this as say some r times e x e y. Okay. In general, I have an E vector like this. This is the E vector. Okay, and suppose this angle is 不能叫做 theta， 我要叫它什么来着？好，我叫它贝塔好了。I call this angle beta, which is the direction of the E vector. So Ex is E cosine beta, and the Ey is E sine beta. This representation is different from the original representation in terms of Ax, Ay, delta x, delta y. Here, E is the magnitude of the E vector. So what is Ex prime? Ex prime is E cosine beta minus phi. Okay? I call this phi. Okay? And the Ey prime is E sine beta minus phi. Okay. So now we can expand the cosine and the sine. We find that Ex prime is E times cosine beta cosine phi plus sine beta sine phi. And E cosine beta is just Ex. And the E sine beta is Ey. Similarly, Ey prime sine beta cosine phi minus cosine beta sine phi, which means that this times this minus Ex sine phi. This times this Ey cosine phi. Okay, so this can be written as Ex prime Ey prime and this matrix Ex Ey, which means that cosine phi sine phi minus sine phi So R matrix R of phi is this matrix cosine phi, sine phi, minus sine phi, cosine phi. This is the R matrix related E and E prime representation. Here is a minus sign, okay? So,这个。So now we know that E prime is R times E, and E is R inverse times E prime, and R inverse phi is just R of negative phi. 反过来转，这个就是等于什么呢？ cosine phi minus sine phi, sine phi, cosine phi. Okay. And I can denote this as S. I define this as S. S is the inverse of R. R 跟 S 有以下特性，好的。R inverse is just the transpose of R. S inverse is just the transpose of S. Okay. So now we have E equal to S times E prime, and ET is E prime T ST。好，就两个矩阵乘在一起，取 transpose 时候顺序要倒过来。So originally we have ET and E equal to 1. And finally we want to have E prime T and E prime equal to 1. Here n is 1 over A squared, 0, 0, 1 over B squared. Okay. This is the standard equation of an ellipse. Okay. So let me see how to derive the relation between M and N. So now we use this equation and substitute it here. Okay. So now we have E prime T S T M S E prime. Okay, and I identify this as E prime T and E prime. equal to 1. Okay. So finally, we have this this equation. STMS equal to N. Okay. However, it will be more convenient to know A squared, B squared instead of 1 over A squared and 1 over B squared. We want this one, not want this one. So consider the inverse of this relation. So N inverse becomes A squared 0, 0, B squared. And S inverse, M inverse, ST inverse. Okay. S inverse is equal to ST. S inverse, ST inverse is becomes the original S. So this is just ST M inverse S. Okay. Now we have to calculate the inverse of M. How to do this? Suppose we have a 2 by 2 matrix like this. M equal to A, B, C, D 好了。Suppose I write M as this one. In fact, here we have B equal to C, like that. The inverse of M can be easily written like this. AD minus BC 就行列式的哈，行列式。然后呢，把 D 跟 A 互换，把 B 跟 C 加负号。你可以 check 这个就是它的反矩阵。So this is the formula for the inverse of a 2 by 2 matrix. So let me check what kind of M inverse we can get. 这个我先擦掉了。So determinant M, this one, AD minus BC, AX squared, AY squared, okay, sine, both power, minus AX squared, AY squared, sine, both power, cosine squared. Okay, and the 1 minus cosine squared becomes sine squared. So finally, we have this AX squared, AY squared, sine squared. This one. Okay. So what is M inverse? We use this to time this quantity, this quantity, this quantity, and this quantity, and put them at the correct position. So this becomes 它那个这个导数先来乘 这个。So we have this ax squared ay squared， 然后这个是加负号啊，变成 ax ay cosine delta ax ay cosine delta。OK， 好，你可以试试看，去乘看是不是刚好两个乘起来是单位矩阵。好 ，So now we can find what the relations we want. N inverse is equal to ST M inverse S. Okay, so we have A squared 0 0 B squared equal to sine phi minus sine phi sine phi cosine phi. Ax squared ay squared ax ay cosine delta ax ay cosine delta times cosine phi minus sine phi sine phi cosine phi. Okay. So now we want to know the major axis and the minor axis, the length. So what is a squared? 好，这个乘开来的一分量啊，所以一分量就是第一列去乘它，然后乘这个第一行。Okay, so this is equal to cosine phi sine phi times 好，怎么得到第一行呢？就是这个矩阵去乘上这个的第一行，啊，所以这矩阵乘上这个的第一行就是 ax squared cosine phi plus ax ay sine phi cosine delta， 然后是 ay 平方 ay squared sine phi plus ax ay cosine phi cosine delta. And the result is a squared equal to ax squared cosine squared phi plus ay squared sine squared phi plus 2ax ay cosine delta cosine phi sine phi. Okay, you can check the result. And similarly, we can derive a b squared. b squared 的话，你就是把 phi 用2/π减 phi 去，没有2/π加 phi 去代。Okay, you can replace the 5 by 5 plus half pi. Then you get this one. So we get the semi-major axis and the semi-minor axis length. We also want to know the orientation of this ellipse. So which equation we can write? See this one. We have a 0. 0 is n minus 1, 2 component. Okay. If we want to know 1, 2 component, we multiply the first row with this matrix, the second row, second column of this matrix. So cosine phi sine phi times 好，这个去乘上第二行，会得到什么呢？minus ax square sine phi ax ay cosine phi cosine delta. Okay. So according to this equation, we have minus ax square sine phi cosine phi. 好像不太对，我看一下啊。错了，它乘以它，然后加上这个 plus ax ay cosine phi cosine delta， 这样才对啊。然后第二个是 the second one ay square cosine phi minus ax ay sine phi cosine delta， 这样才对啊，这样才对。好，然后从这里 ，then according to this component, this condition, 0 condition, find 负的 ax 平方sin phi cosine phi， 然后加上 ax ay cosine 平方 cosine 六，然后加上 ay 平方 sin phi cosine。 等于0。好，等于0。 那我们把这两个合并的话，然后这两个合并的话，sin phi 乘以 cos phi 的2倍会变成 sin 2 phi sin 2 phi is equal to 2 sin phi cosine phi. And cosine square phi minus sine square phi is cosine 2 phi. Okay. So 1/2 ay squared minus ax squared. Okay. Plus ax ay cosine delta. Sorry. Ax ay cosine delta times cosine 2 phi equal to 0. Okay? So finally we have ax ay下我为什么觉得我好像哪里写错？应该没有。对，好。So finally we have this tangent 2 phi is equal to sine 2 phi divided by cosine 2 phi. And this is nothing but this 2 ax ay cosine delta divided by ax squared minus ay squared. Okay? So from this equation we can find the orientation phi. We just calculate the tangent and then we can find the phi corresponding to this tangent. So this equation gives us the orientation. So now we have shape, orientation, and now we want to know the sense of a revolution. How to find the sense of revolution. Suppose initially we have E vector E. This is an E vector at the time t. We want to know after a very tiny time difference where the E vector located. Okay. At the time t, we have E vector et, and at the time t plus dt, the new direction of the E vector is along this direction. So we want to know how it revolves. So let me calculate this quantity. E cross delta E. E cross delta E. This part is the delta E. Say This is delta E. This is E. So if E cross delta E, I see the Z component of E cross delta E. If this is positive, okay, then we get counterclockwise revolution. Okay. 我把这一个算完，大概在几分钟，我们再下课。好，现在如果是这个东西呢，我把它除以一个很短的时间。So I can differentiate the E vector and calculate this quantity. Okay. Remember that we have EX and EY written as AX cosine something and AY cosine something. So this quantity, this is just minus omega AX. 现在要用这个实数的电场计算啊 ，the real E vector, not the complex representation. Sine omega t minus kz plus delta x. Okay, and Ey over dt is minus omega ay sine omega t minus kz plus delta y. Okay. So what is the z component of this quantity? This is dx dt d ey minus ey dt d dx. Okay. So the Z component, so the Z component becomes minus omega AX AY times cosine alpha. Remember what alpha is? This is alpha, and this is alpha plus delta, okay? And sine alpha plus delta minus EY 是cosine alpha plus delta sine alpha. Okay? So this becomes minus omega AX AY sine delta. Okay. 因为 alpha 加 delta 减掉 alpha 对不对 ？Okay. So we see that if sine delta is positive, then we have this negative, which means that clockwise rotation. Okay. And if sine delta is negative, then this becomes positive, which means that we have counter clockwise。rotation。OK， 好，我们在这边先休息一下，好，休息5到10分钟，好。